In the shadowed streets of early 20th century New York, where fog clings to cobblestones and whispers travel faster than the law, two men move unseen yet felt by everyone around them. One is a genius of the mind, the other a master of fear. One manipulates, the other executes. Tonight, you step into a world of high-stakes gambles, ruthless ambition, and silent power, where every decision could change the city forever. Welcome to the hidden empire of Arnold Rothstein and Anastasia, the brain and the executioner. You wake up in New York City sometime around 1910, though the concept of waking here is different from what you know today. The streets hum with horse-drawn carriages and the occasional rattle of early automobiles, steam rising from manhole covers like ghosts escaping the bowels of the city. The air carries the pungent mix of coal smoke, horse dung, and the faint aroma of fresh-baked bread from bakeries tucked between brick tenements. Tenement windows rattle as families go about their mornings, and vendors call out their wares, their voices slicing through the ambient chaos. The city is alive, bustling, unforgiving, and beneath its noise, the heartbeat of ambition, greed, and crime pulses louder than most dare to notice. You find yourself walking through the Lower East Side, among immigrants clutching parcels, pushing baby carriages, weaving through the mosaic of languages, smells, and desperation. But here, in this tangle of humanity, you are searching for one man, Arnold Rothstein, the man who would become known as the Brain. And as you move closer to his world, you begin to feel the weight of his presence even before you meet him. Rothstein's life was never meant to be ordinary. Born into a wealthy Jewish family in Manhattan in 1882, he grew up surrounded by privilege, yet he shunned the predictable path of business or law. While other boys of his class played cricket or studied at elite schools, Arnold was already observing, calculating, learning the subtle art of human nature. He watched the men who ran the streets, the gamblers who bet with both money and lives, and the politicians who claimed power only to be swayed by silver and influence. Every glance, every whispered word, every faint twitch of muscle became part of his education. By the time he was in his early 20s, Rothstein had immersed himself in the world of gambling. Not the casual games played for nickels and dimes at smoky taverns, but the kind of games where fortunes, and sometimes fates, were won and lost on a single roll of dice, a single flip of a card. His reputation grew quietly at first, almost imperceptibly. People whispered about the young man who could remember every card played in a marathon poker game, who could calculate odds faster than anyone else in the room, and who never showed fear, not even when the men around him brandished guns or knives in moments of anger. He learned to move unseen, like a shadow that observes everything but reveals nothing. In the back rooms of Manhattan, Rothstein's name became synonymous with intelligence and cold calculation. He played games where the stakes were vast and the players ruthless. And in those games he never lost, not because luck favored him but because he understood people. He understood greed, pride, desperation, and the quiet terror that drove men to risk everything. He could see the patterns in their behavior, the tiny tells that betrayed intentions hidden behind stoic masks. But Rothstein's ambitions were not limited to the dimly lit tables of backroom card games. He was drawn to the city's underworld with a vision larger than most could imagine. He saw the chaotic network of gangs, saloons, and illegal gambling dens as a grand chessboard, and he intended to be the player moving the pieces. Money was not his sole objective. Power, influence, and control of information were equally vital. Each bet he placed, each alliance he forged, each secret he kept was a calculated step toward mastery over the city's hidden economy. It is in this period, the late 1910s, that whispers of his involvement in schemes that could shake the foundations of the nation began to circulate. You hear murmurings of the 1919 World Series, a scandal that would become infamous in American sports history. Rothstein, the man who could see through every bluff, who could manipulate men as easily as a puppeteer manipulates marionettes, was said to have orchestrated the fix. And though the evidence was never sufficient to convict him, the notion alone cemented his reputation as a mastermind capable of bending even the most public, celebrated arenas to his will. As you continue your walk through the city, the air grows heavier, charged with anticipation. You sense that Rothstein's influence extends beyond the gambling halls and into politics, law enforcement, and even the corridors of legitimate business. Men in pinstripe suits and bowler hats, their expressions carefully neutral, pass you on the sidewalk, each carrying secrets and debts to the invisible empire that Arnold Rothstein is building piece by piece. You realize that in this city, survival requires not just strength or courage, but foresight, patience, and the ability to anticipate the desires and fears of every person you encounter. You enter a narrow alley that opens into the back of a lavish, unassuming townhouse. Here, Rothstein meets with his associates, men of varying temperament and skill, some loyal, some easily swayed by promises of wealth. The room smells faintly of cigars and ink. Ledgers lie open alongside stacks of neatly arranged poker chips. Rothstein sits at the center, a calm presence amidst the storm of whispered negotiations and nervous laughter. His eyes, sharp and calculating, sweep across the room, taking in every micro-expression, every tremor of unease, every hint of dishonesty. In that moment, it becomes clear why he is called the brain. Not because he is stronger or fiercer than anyone else, but because he sees patterns that others cannot, understands human nature in ways that border on the supernatural, and wields information as a weapon more lethal than any gun. You notice the meticulous way he conducts his meetings. He allows his guests to speak, asks questions that seem innocuous, and nods as if he were merely listening, but in truth, every word is measured, every gesture recorded and analyzed. Within minutes he can predict the outcome of a negotiation, anticipate a betrayal, or identify the one person who could jeopardize the entire operation. The room feels alive, charged with tension, yet Rothstein remains perfectly serene, like the eye of a storm. Outside, the city continues unabated. Streetcars clatter across rails, vendors hawk their goods, and children dart between legs, oblivious to the dangerous games that govern the adults around them. The contrast is stark. Innocence brushing against ambition, playfulness against cold calculation. It is in this environment that Rothstein thrives, drawing energy from chaos, yet always maintaining control. As the evening wears on, the conversations turn to the city's broader landscape of crime and opportunity. Rothstein discusses the expansion of gambling houses, the potential in illicit liquor, the subtle art of bribery, and the importance of cultivating both fear and respect. He speaks of rivals with a mix of disdain and calculation, measuring how best to maneuver around threats while extracting advantage. Every sentence, every glance, every pause carries significance, and you realize that you are witnessing the formation of an empire, not one built on walls or armies but on intellect, influence, and an unparalleled understanding of human weakness. By the time you leave the townhouse, night has fully settled over Manhattan. Gas lamps flicker along the sidewalks, casting long, wavering shadows. The city is quieter now, but the undercurrent of ambition, danger, and opportunity hums as loudly as ever. As you walk back into the streets, you carry with you the sense that you have glimpsed the mind of a man who can manipulate fate itself, who plays with fortunes and lives as if they were mere pieces on a chessboard. Arnold Rothstein, the brain, has claimed his place quietly, decisively, and inexorably, as one of the most formidable figures in the city's history. You feel a mixture of awe and unease. There is brilliance here but also danger. In the world Rothstein inhabits, knowledge is power, patience is a weapon, and a single misstep can cost everything. Yet even as the city hums around you, you are compelled to follow his story, to watch the intricate dance of ambition, risk, and intelligence unfold. And as your eyes grow heavy, you know this is only the beginning. The game is vast, the stakes are immense, and Rothstein's influence will ripple through the city in ways that will reverberate for years to come. Tonight, you are a witness to history in the making, and the mind of the brain has just opened its doors to you. The streets of New York are alive in a way that never truly sleeps. By the time you step out of your modest lodging in the Lower East Side, the city already thrums with energy, streetcars clanging, vendors shouting their wares, and the faint metallic scent of rain-dampened cobblestones. Yet beneath the ordinary hustle, a hidden rhythm persists, one governed by men like Arnold Rothstein. And tonight, you follow him deeper into that rhythm, into the shadowed corners of power and ambition. Rothstein's rise was not sudden, it was precise, deliberate, like the placement of pieces on a chessboard. He moved silently, observing, calculating, recording every gesture, every whispered word, every subtle twitch that betrayed intent. By his early 20s, he had begun frequenting the back rooms of Manhattan's gambling dens, not as a player seeking thrill, but as a student seeking understanding. He watched the men around the poker tables with a keen eye, noting who bluffed too boldly, who hesitated too long, who read their opponents and who misread entirely. To Rothstein, the stakes of the game were less about money and more about understanding the human condition. The first true test came in a small, dimly lit room above a speakeasy. Cigarette smoke curled lazily toward the ceiling, mixing with the scent of stale whiskey and the faint tang of sweat. A half-dozen men leaned over the green felt table, eyes flicking constantly, hands twitching near chips and concealed pistols alike. Rothstein took his seat at the corner, calm, composed, his presence unassuming yet commanding. They didn't know him yet, but soon they would. The game began, slow and deliberate. Cards were dealt, wagers made and bluffs attempted. Rothstein spoke rarely, only when necessary, his words precise, calculated to reveal nothing while probing for information. Within minutes, he had memorized patterns, observed tells, and quietly deduced who held which hand. Others played to win money, he played to win knowledge. By the end of the night, he had not only doubled his small stake but also understood the psychology of every man at that table. And from that night onward, his reputation quietly began to grow. It wasn't just the mechanics of gambling that Rothstein mastered. He understood alliances, betrayals, and the subtle hierarchy of trust. He could spot insecurity faster than any rival could hide it, and he knew when to offer reassurance or feign ignorance. Men of brute strength or violent temper often underestimated him, mistaking his calm demeanor for naivety. Few realized that behind his serene expression, every calculation was precise, every move anticipated. By 1915, Rothstein had begun expanding beyond the small gambling rooms of Manhattan. He invested in underground poker clubs, betting parlors, and even sports wagers. He cultivated relationships with influential men, politicians, law enforcement, and fellow criminals alike. Each relationship was a thread, woven carefully into a web that would secure him power and protection. He offered favors, extended credit, and occasionally a subtle threat, never overt, never reckless. Every action was deliberate, every word measured. It was not enough to have money. Rothstein sought influence, and influence required patience. One of the most pivotal moments in his rise came with the infamous 1919 World Series. The tale is well known now, a story whispered in awe and fear. Rothstein is said to have orchestrated the fix, though no court ever convicted him. To him it was not a crime but a calculated strategy, a demonstration of intelligence and foresight. The stakes were immense: public spectacle, reputations, fortunes. Rothstein handled it with the same meticulous planning as a master chess player moving pieces toward victory, knowing that the appearance of invisibility was his greatest advantage. Yet, the life Rothstein led was far from glamorous in the conventional sense. He did not attend grand parties or flaunt wealth ostentatiously. Instead, he preferred discretion, quiet observation, and control. Luxury was only a tool to gain influence. His suits were always immaculate, his gestures polite, his manners impeccable. But underneath the veneer of civility lurked a mind as sharp as a scalpel, capable of slicing through the bravado and posturing of the most dangerous men in the city. Every handshake, every contract, every conversation became an opportunity, if one knew how to read it as Rothstein did. As Rothstein's empire grew, so did the whispers. Some called him the brains behind the underworld, others simply, the brain. He moved through the city like a shadow, his name carried quietly in corners, whispered in backrooms and alleyways. Enemies respected him not out of fear alone, but because they understood his unparalleled ability to manipulate circumstances, to orchestrate outcomes that no one else could foresee. Even men who despised him admitted that challenging Rothstein directly was foolhardy. He played a game that extended far beyond the table, where information was currency, and every relationship a strategic asset. But Rothstein's life was not without risk. Every expansion, every bet, every alliance brought new challenges. Rivals plotted, law enforcement watched, and betrayal lurked around every corner. Yet he thrived in this environment, seeing danger as an extension of the game, a test of intellect rather than of brute force. Where others panicked, Rothstein analyzed. Where others saw chaos, he saw patterns. And through it all, his calm presence remained unshaken, a testament to his mastery of both mind and circumstance. You follow him one evening to a grand yet discreet apartment in Manhattan's Upper West Side. The room is lined with books, maps, and ledgers detailing every transaction, every wager, every agreement. Rothstein sits at a polished mahogany table, a cigar in hand, smoke curling upward, his eyes scanning the ledger with meticulous attention. Around him, his associates murmur quietly, aware that their every action is being noted, recorded, and interpreted. Rothstein listens more than he speaks, his silence more commanding than any shout. In that quiet observation, he exerts control, steering the fates of men as easily as a puppeteer directs marionettes. The city outside continues its restless rhythm, oblivious to the empire being constructed within these walls. Carriages rattle over cobblestones, street lamps flicker in the misty evening, and the distant sound of a piano drifts from a nearby tavern. The juxtaposition is stark, the ordinary life of a city unaware, and the extraordinary calculations of a man who sees the strings beneath it all. You, the observer, feel the gravity of Rothstein's presence. He is not merely a man. He is a force, a mind that bends circumstance to its will, shaping the city's underworld with a combination of intellect, strategy, and subtle intimidation. As midnight approaches, Rothstein's meetings conclude. Men leave with their instructions, debts, or favors secured, and the apartment falls silent save for the faint hiss of a gas lamp and the occasional scrape of a chair. You realize that what you have witnessed is not just a man playing a game of chance. It is the methodical construction of influence, the careful orchestration of power, and the cultivation of a reputation that will endure far beyond his lifetime. Rothstein is not simply participating in the city's underworld. He is defining it, molding it to his vision with precision and patience. Walking back through the quiet streets, you notice the city in a new light. The shadows seem deeper, the air more charged. Everywhere, men and women move, unaware that their fortunes, their alliances, their very lives might be influenced by the unseen hand of Arnold Rothstein. The brain is awake, always calculating, always anticipating, and you, in following his path, begin to understand the magnitude of his intellect and ambition. This is only the beginning of the story, the first steps in a journey that will intertwine with other figures of power and violence, leading to schemes, betrayals, and the dark allure of the American underworld. By the time you return to your lodging, the city has settled into a tenuous quiet. Yet the rhythm of ambition, danger, and intellect continues, like an undercurrent beneath the still surface. You feel the subtle tension in the air, the sense that every man, every bet, every whispered word matters. Rothstein's mind, his strategy, and his foresight have already begun to shape the destiny of a city, and you, the silent witness, can only follow as the story unfolds, through ambition, cunning, and the cold brilliance of the brain. The nights of New York City have a peculiar pulse. Gas lamps cast wavering halos on wet cobblestones, streetcars clatter across iron rails, and distant piano notes float from taverns tucked between brick buildings. The hum of life continues endlessly, but for those attuned to the currents beneath the city, there is another rhythm, one of ambition, manipulation, and danger. You, the silent observer, feel it now, moving through alleys across the East River, and into the hidden world that Arnold Rothstein has mastered. But tonight, the story begins to intertwine with another force, a man who will become known as Albert Anastasia, later the feared Lord High Executioner of Murder Inc. Rothstein's mind, honed by years of observation and calculation, perceives opportunity where others see chaos. He is already aware, by subtle whisperings and intelligence from his associates, of the rising stars in the city's criminal underworld. Among them, Anastasia's name surfaces, though he remains unseen. Rothstein does not need to meet him directly to understand him. The world has a way of leaving clues for those who can read them. And Arnold Rothstein reads the city like an open book. It is the spring of 1920 when the first indirect connections are made. A network of enforcers, gamblers, and small-time operators begins to intersect between the worlds of Rothstein and the young Anastasia. Rothstein learns of a particularly efficient and ruthless enforcer, someone who carries out violent deeds with precision, discretion, and an almost clinical detachment. Men speak of Anastasia with a mix of awe and fear. The whispers are sufficient for Rothstein to note, this is a man who could be useful, dangerous, or both. Meanwhile, Anastasia is finding his own path through New York's underworld. A Sicilian immigrant with sharp instincts and a reputation for decisive action, he moves with a lethal grace. By his mid-20s, he is already involved in local enforcer work, taking on assignments that others shy away from. The city teaches its lessons quickly, often painfully. Anastasia learns early that survival requires intelligence as much as muscle, discretion as much as fear, and a certain ruthlessness tempered by the knowledge that one wrong move can be fatal. Rothstein's awareness of Anastasia is strategic. He does not approach the young enforcer as a mentor or an ally. He watches, cataloging strengths, weaknesses, and potential utility. Information, after all, is power, and Rothstein possesses it in abundance. He sends subtle messages through intermediaries, payments for certain services, recommendations for jobs that would enhance Anastasia's skills, and discreet recognition of the younger man's growing reputation. In this way, Rothstein begins to influence Anastasia's trajectory without a single meeting. Like pieces on a chessboard, the two men are maneuvered by circumstance, yet Rothstein ensures he sees the patterns before they fully unfold. During one evening in a small backroom of a Manhattan gambling hall, Rothstein oversees a high-stakes poker game. Cigarette smoke hangs thick in the air, mingling with the scent of whiskey and damp wool coats. The table is crowded with men of varying temperament, seasoned gamblers, nervous newcomers, and a few who are rumored to be enforcers from distant boroughs. Rothstein observes everything: the hesitation of a hand reaching for chips, the subtle tension in a jaw, the almost imperceptible glance toward the door. Every detail informs his next move. And it is in moments like these, when stakes are high and patience is tested, that Rothstein's genius becomes visible. Meanwhile, Anastasia is elsewhere, quietly executing an assignment for a local racketeer. A man owes money, and Anastasia delivers a lesson he will not soon forget. Precise, cold, and efficient, he completes the job with no witnesses, no noise, and no hesitation. It is the kind of work that will earn both fear and respect. Currency in the world Rothstein is beginning to map. Though their paths have not crossed, Rothstein's associates report on these deeds, providing insight into Anastasia's methods, temperament, and capabilities. In this indirect observation, Rothstein notes something crucial: Anastasia is not reckless. He is disciplined, intelligent, and utterly fearless. A perfect instrument in the hands of a man like Rothstein. The following weeks see an intricate dance of coordination and indirect contact. Rothstein's empire of gambling, loans, and influence touches many men who cross paths with Anastasia. A debt collection here, a subtle warning there, all orchestrated with the precision of a maestro. Anastasia, focused on immediate tasks, senses the invisible currents but cannot yet name the source. He respects and fears the unseen hand that shapes outcomes in ways subtle yet decisive. Rothstein does not intervene overtly. He allows the young enforcer to grow, to develop skills that will eventually serve both their interests, or perhaps serve the city's underworld in ways Rothstein alone can foresee. This convergence of paths is not limited to professional interactions. New York is a city of whispers, shadows, and reputation. Stories travel through bars, speakeasies, and back alleys. Rothstein hears of Anastasia's meticulous methods, his cold efficiency, and his burgeoning influence. He recognizes that power is not merely the accumulation of money but also the ability to instill respect, fear, and loyalty. Anastasia is already demonstrating mastery over these elements, and Rothstein makes mental notes. This man could either be a formidable ally or a dangerous rival in the years to come. Even as Rothstein and Anastasia operate in separate spheres, their actions begin to resonate across the city. When Rothstein arranges a high-stakes game, men who fear Anastasia hesitate at their tables. When Anastasia executes a carefully planned act of intimidation, Rothstein's associates take note, calculating how these moves affect the balance of power. Their influence grows in parallel, entwined by circumstance, ambition, and the hidden architecture of the underworld. To an outside observer, it seems as if the city is moving unpredictably, but Rothstein sees the patterns. He perceives the convergence long before it becomes apparent to others. Rothstein's brilliance lies not only in strategy but also in his patience. He understands that timing is everything. The city's currents cannot be rushed. Power is cultivated, alliances nurtured, and enemies neutralized with care. He observes Anastasia with patience, waiting for the moment when their paths will intersect directly, when influence, necessity, and opportunity align. Until then, Rothstein remains the silent architect, guiding outcomes from the shadows, letting the young enforcer grow, learning and demonstrating his capabilities. As you follow Rothstein through the streets this evening, the city becomes almost cinematic, gas lamps casting long, wavering shadows on rain-slicked sidewalks, horse hooves clattering against stone, a distant violin playing from a tenement window. Every detail is part of the scene, every movement a thread in the intricate tapestry of the city. Rothstein moves through it with quiet authority, aware that every glance, every word, every subtle gesture carries meaning. And in the distance, Anastasia's actions echo through the network of whispers and reports, signaling the emergence of a future force. Someone who will come to embody fear and precision in ways the city has never seen. By midnight, Rothstein retreats to his townhouse, the soft hum of gas lamps greeting him like old companions. Ledgers are open, notes meticulously recorded, and the city's pulse flows through his mind like a river of data. He reviews each transaction, each interaction, each subtle signal he has observed. In this quiet, calculated solitude, he understands that the convergence of his world and Anastasia's is inevitable. The city is preparing the stage and he is the director, patient and deliberate. You leave Rothstein for the evening, stepping back into the dimly lit streets. The rhythm of the city has not changed, but your perception has shifted. Behind every corner, in every whisper, in every shadow, there is movement, strategy, and latent power. You sense that Rothstein and Anastasia, though not yet in direct contact, are on a collision course, a convergence that will shape the fate of New York's underworld in ways both brilliant and terrifying. And as you let your thoughts drift, you understand one immutable truth. In the city that never sleeps, the most dangerous games are played not with cards or dice, but with minds, ambition, and the quiet orchestration of unseen forces. Tonight the stage is set. Rothstein watches from the shadows, Anastasia sharpens his skills in the alleys, and the city, brilliant, chaotic, unforgiving, holds its breath. The game is vast, the stakes are immense, and you, the silent witness, are only beginning to comprehend the depth of strategy, patience, and calculated risk that define Arnold Rothstein, the brain, and the men who will follow in his shadow. The city is restless tonight. Gas lamps flicker along cobblestone streets, casting long, wavering shadows that seem to slither along brick walls. The rhythmic clatter of streetcars echoes faintly, punctuated by the distant whistle of a tugboat navigating the East River. It is in this twilight of sound, shadow, and tension that the paths of Arnold Rothstein and Albert Anastasia begin to intersect, not by chance but by design, and the city itself seems to hold its breath as history prepares to pivot. Rothstein is seated in the back room of a high-end Manhattan gambling club, the sort of place that few outsiders would recognize as anything but a private lounge. The air is thick with cigar smoke, the scent of polished wood, and the faint tang of whiskey. Rothstein surveys the room, a calm figure amid the low murmur of men engaged in high-stakes poker and discreet conversations. He knows that influence is often more about perception than control. Men here believe they hold the power because of guns, money, or brute strength, but Rothstein understands that true control lies in knowing the mind of every person at the table. This evening he waits for a contact, a link in the web that will eventually connect him to Anastasia. A small man, nervous but diligent, approaches Rothstein with careful steps. He brings news of a rising enforcer in Brooklyn, a Sicilian immigrant who has demonstrated a unique combination of ruthlessness and precision in his work. The young man's deeds have been reported through whispers, letters, and discreet intermediaries. Rothstein nods slightly, absorbing every detail. The information is both intriguing and strategically valuable. Anastasia is disciplined, efficient, and ambitious, the perfect type of man to either control or keep close. Anastasia, on the other hand, is in a warehouse on the outskirts of Brooklyn, overseeing a small operation for one of his local bosses. Men move quietly, loading crates and performing tasks with the precision Rothstein would later recognize as a signature of the future Lord High Executioner. Anastasia does not know that his reputation has already reached Manhattan. He does not yet see the invisible hand that is beginning to guide his path. But in the subtle patterns of interaction, in the way Rothstein's world touches the edges of his own, the convergence begins. That convergence takes form in a neutral location, a small, dimly lit backroom above a tailor's shop in Lower Manhattan, chosen deliberately for its privacy and distance from prying eyes. The room is modest, furnished with a long wooden table, chairs arranged around it, and the faint scent of sewing needles, thread, and aged wood. Here, intermediaries from both Rothstein's and Anastasia's worlds meet first, not the men themselves, but trusted lieutenants who exchange introductions, information, and proposals. Every gesture, every word, every glance is observed, catalogued, and later reported to their principals. Rothstein listens quietly, absorbing the details. He notes Anastasia's efficiency, his decisiveness, and the reputation for discretion. These are qualities that Rothstein values highly. He begins to formulate a plan, not an immediate alliance but a subtle influence. If handled correctly, Anastasia can be guided toward certain actions, steered into assignments that will serve both Rothstein's objectives and indirectly consolidate power across New York's underworld. The young enforcer is unaware that he is being mapped, his strengths noted, his tendencies analyzed. In the days that follow, small interactions occur. A loan collection is arranged through Anastasia's crew, a minor dispute mediated by Rothstein's associates. These exchanges are transactional on the surface, yet they establish trust, respect, and a recognition of capability. Rothstein does not seek immediate loyalty. He seeks evidence of intelligence, reliability, and judgment. Anastasia, immersed in his own world, only sees the practicality of the assignments, yet each task is a subtle test, a measure of skill, patience, and discretion. One evening, Rothstein receives a report from an associate. Anastasia has completed an assignment with meticulous precision, leaving no trace of impropriety, intimidation, or error. The young man's reputation for effectiveness and fearlessness is confirmed. Rothstein leans back in his chair, exhaling a thin stream of cigar smoke and smiles faintly. The convergence is no longer theoretical, it is taking shape, guided by circumstance, intelligence, and the quiet orchestration of one man's mind. The city continues around them, oblivious to the intricate dance unfolding in its shadowed corners. Streetlights flicker, horse-drawn carriages rattle across uneven pavement, and the distant murmur of a theater drifts across the East River. In the midst of it all, Rothstein and Anastasia's worlds intersect in subtle ways, through shared associates, overlapping assignments, and whispered communications. No overt confrontation occurs, yet the groundwork is laid for future collaboration, or conflict. Every movement is deliberate, calculated, and laden with potential consequences. By the following week, Rothstein extends a personal invitation to Anastasia through intermediaries, a discreet meeting at a private club, framed as an opportunity to discuss mutually beneficial arrangements. The location is chosen for discretion, the atmosphere controlled, and the stakes understated, yet the tension is palpable. Both men are aware of the other's reputations, yet the encounter remains framed as business, strategy, and mutual opportunity. Rothstein's calm authority meets Anastasia's lethal precision, though the two have not yet directly exchanged words. The room itself seems to hum with the anticipation of minds measuring, testing, and calculating one another. In this silent, almost imperceptible exchange, the future of New York's underworld begins to crystallize. Rothstein's brilliance, patience, and foresight intersect with Anastasia's discipline, ruthlessness, and efficiency. The city, with its noise, chaos, and endless motion, becomes the backdrop for the emergence of a partnership, and perhaps rivalry, that will shape the fate of countless lives. Here, in the shadowed corners of Manhattan, the first seeds of murder incorporated, the orchestration of high-stakes schemes, and the manipulation of both crime and politics are planted. You follow the subtle currents of this unfolding drama, sensing the gravity of every action, every gesture, and every report. Rothstein's mind, always calculating, already sees several steps ahead, potential alliances, vulnerabilities, and contingencies mapped in meticulous detail. Anastasia, though unaware of the full orchestration, demonstrates instincts that make him a perfect complement, or formidable obstacle, to Rothstein's objectives. Together, even indirectly, they form a combination of intellect and brutality that few in the city could withstand. As midnight deepens, Rothstein retires to his townhouse, reviewing notes, correspondences, and reports. Anastasia returns to Brooklyn, his mind sharpened by assignments completed, skills honed, and awareness of a hidden influence in Manhattan. Both men continue their separate paths, yet the threads connecting them grow taut, woven together by ambition, circumstance, and the invisible architecture of the underworld. The city itself seems to pause, almost in acknowledgement of this convergence. Gas lamps flicker, fog drifts along alleyways, and distant clocks toll quietly. The rhythm of New York continues, but beneath the ordinary motion, the undercurrent of strategy, intelligence, and calculated influence flows strong and steady. Rothstein and Anastasia, each in their own domain, have begun the delicate dance that will define the city's criminal future, a dance of shadows, influence, and carefully measured power. And as you walk the silent streets after observing these events, you realize something profound. The collision of minds, not mere violence, shapes the fate of cities. In the quiet observation of deeds, in the careful orchestration of assignments and alliances, Arnold Rothstein, the brain, is orchestrating the next chapter of New York's underworld, while Albert Anastasia, yet unaware, is stepping onto the stage that Rothstein has silently prepared. The game is no longer only on the card tables or the back alleys, it is a game of intellect, strategy, and shadows, and you, as the witness, feel its weight pressing upon the streets and every life moving within them. Tonight, the shadows have met, not with handshake or confrontation, but with mutual acknowledgement through deeds, reputation, and unseen influence. The city waits, breathless, as the players take their first deliberate moves. And in the quiet, calculated spaces between observation and action, history begins to take shape. The city of New York, though familiar to you by now, seems to shift in tone tonight. A damp fog rolls off the East River, clinging to cobblestones and glinting off wet window panes. Street lamps flicker, casting long shadows that appear to slither along the alley walls. It is in this obscured, half-lit world that the true games of power and ambition begin to unfold, and you, the observer, feel the weight of every calculated move. Arnold Rothstein sits in his townhouse, a ledger open before him. The room smells faintly of cigar smoke, ink, and polished wood. Outside, the muffled sounds of the city create a rhythm of anticipation. distant clanging of trolley cars, muted laughter from street-side taverns, the occasional shriek of a horse-drawn wagon negotiating the narrow streets. Yet inside this room, silence reigns, punctuated only by the scratch of Rothstein's pen as he calculates wagers, payouts, and contingencies. Tonight, the stakes are not just money, they are influence, reputation, and the shaping of history itself. Rothstein has been planning meticulously for months. The 1919 World Series is approaching, and he sees an opportunity to exert control on a scale far beyond the tables and backrooms he normally inhabits. This is not merely a gamble of dollars, it is a gamble of perception, prestige, and power. He has already identified the players susceptible to persuasion, the ones motivated by greed, pride, or fear. Through intermediaries, he begins laying subtle groundwork, ensuring that the right conditions are in place. Every loan, every favor, every quietly whispered suggestion is part of a larger strategy. Meanwhile, Anastasia is establishing himself further in Brooklyn, solidifying his position within the network that will become known as Murder Incorporated tonight. He oversees the resolution of a dispute between two small-time racketeers. The situation requires precision, intimidation without unnecessary violence, persuasion without excessive force. Anastasia moves like a shadow, issuing instructions in low tones, observing reactions and intervening only when required. His actions ripple outward, earning both fear and respect. Unknown to him, Rothstein's associates are taking note, quietly assessing his methods and effectiveness. The threads of their influence are beginning to intersect in subtle ways. A man indebted to Rothstein's network fails to meet obligations and is corrected under Anastasia's supervision. The young enforcer's reputation for swift, precise action confirms to Rothstein that this is a man who can be relied upon, or at least understood. Both men continue their separate operations, yet the city's underworld grows increasingly interconnected. Rumors, debts, favors, and intimidation weave a lattice of influence that Rothstein sees with clarity and Anastasia navigates instinctively. One evening, Rothstein calls a meeting with his closest associates. The room is dimly lit, the tables scattered with ledgers, chips, and notes. He speaks quietly but firmly, outlining the approach to the World Series. The players involved are targeted not with threats but with incentive, financial, reputational, psychological. Rothstein understands human behavior intimately. He anticipates who will resist, who will comply, who will attempt to manipulate him, and he prepares contingencies for each scenario. Every detail is accounted for, every possibility calculated. It is not luck that will determine success but foresight and control. In Brooklyn, Anastasia handles a more immediate, violent assignment. A rival crew has overstepped bounds, and the enforcement requires precision. Anastasia moves with a quiet lethality, neutralizing threats efficiently. The city watches him in fragments. Whispers in bars, cautious glances in alleyways, reports filtered through intermediaries. Rothstein, aware of Anastasia's growing influence, begins considering how such an enforcer could serve larger schemes, whether as a deterrent, a problem solver, or a tool in the orchestration of wider strategies. The young man's actions are pieces on Rothstein's invisible chessboard. The approaching World Series represents a turning point. Rothstein's plan involves careful manipulation of players, odds, and public perception. Small wagers, subtle encouragement, and discreet pressure will coalesce to produce the desired outcome. The stakes are enormous, and any miscalculation could not only ruin the operation but also destroy reputations and fortunes. Rothstein is meticulous. He reviews each player's tendencies, financial pressures, and personal weaknesses. He rehearses potential conversations, anticipates reactions, and plans escape routes for all contingencies. This is a masterclass in psychological strategy, and Rothstein is the conductor. Simultaneously, Anastasia's influence begins to indirectly affect Rothstein's operations. A thug coerced into compliance by Anastasia's intervention ensures that Rothstein's arrangements proceed without obstruction. While Anastasia is unaware of the larger orchestration, his efficiency serves the broader plan, demonstrating the invisible synergy that arises when intellect and ruthlessness converge. Rothstein notes the timing, the precision, and the effect of these interventions, adjusting his calculations accordingly. Each movement, each decision, is a ripple through the network of New York's underworld, strengthening Rothstein's position while reinforcing Anastasia's growing reputation. The interplay of these parallel operations exemplifies Rothstein's genius. He does not control every hand directly. He manipulates circumstances, sets incentives, and observes outcomes. Anastasia's actions, whether intentional or coincidental, align with Rothstein's broader strategy. The city itself becomes a stage for their calculated movements, each alley, warehouse, and backroom serving as a set piece in a sprawling, high-stakes drama. Rothstein thrives on such complexity, finding order in the apparent chaos, structure in the labyrinth of human ambition. By nightfall, Rothstein consolidates his plans. Ledgers are updated, notes cross-referenced, and communications with trusted intermediaries are established. Every variable has been considered: financial pressures, behavioral tendencies, potential betrayals, and even public scrutiny. The first moves are in motion. The World Series fix, though still distant, is being meticulously orchestrated. The city's underworld hums with tension, as if aware that a new level of control and manipulation is being enacted. Anastasia, still entrenched in Brooklyn, concludes his assignments for the evening. Men respect him, fear him, and follow his directions without question. Unseen by him, Rothstein has taken note, cataloged performance, and recalibrated the network of influence. The two men, operating independently, are moving toward convergence in strategy, objectives, and eventual collaboration. The city is the canvas. Rothstein and Anastasia brush and chisel. Each act of cunning, each precise enforcement, builds toward a climax whose magnitude few could yet comprehend. Walking through the fog-laden streets, you sense the invisible threads linking Rothstein's intellect to Anastasia's execution. The city itself seems to breathe with anticipation, the ordinary rhythm of carts, voices, and distant bells overlaid with the silent tension of clandestine plans. These are not mere coincidences but the deliberate orchestration of ambition, power, and human behavior. Rothstein and Anastasia are both architects and instruments, shaping outcomes in ways the world outside cannot perceive. Every shadow, every whispered conversation, every calculated move becomes part of a grand design. Tonight, the first significant outcomes of Rothstein's intricate planning begin to manifest. Bets are placed, loyalties tested, and subtle pressure applied. Anastasia's enforcements maintain order and compliance, unwittingly supporting Rothstein's grander strategy. The city itself seems to watch silently, as if acknowledging the precision and cunning at work. And as you step back, observing this complex dance, you realize that the stakes are no longer confined to gambling tables or alleyways. They extend to the very fabric of New York's underworld, where influence, fear, and intelligence define the winners and the losers. By midnight, Rothstein retires to his townhouse, reviewing every detail, anticipating every ripple effect, and preparing for the coming days. Anastasia, meanwhile, returns to Brooklyn, his mind sharpened, his reputation enhanced, his presence felt in both fear and respect. The stage is set for the scandal that will forever alter the landscape of American sports and crime, the infamous World Series of 1919. And as the city settles under a blanket of fog and quiet, the invisible convergence of Rothstein's intellect and Anastasia's ruthlessness continues to tighten, laying the groundwork for events that will echo through history. The city holds its breath. A chill drifts off the East River, curling around gas lamps and winding through narrow streets. The sounds of carts, footsteps, and distant conversations form a steady rhythm, but beneath it hums a different pulse, the pulse of calculated ambition, subtle threats, and silent maneuvering. Arnold Rothstein moves through it like a shadow, every step precise, every glance measured. Tonight, the stakes are higher, the game sharper, and the dangers more tangible. Rothstein's townhouse is quiet as he reviews the final arrangements. Ledgers line the table. Notes on players, contacts, and contingencies are meticulously organized. The 1919 World Series looms, not just as a sports event but as a chessboard, each player a piece to manipulate. Rothstein considers every variable, personal weaknesses of the players, debts, loyalty, and temperament. He anticipates resistance, hesitation, and betrayal and prepares countermeasures. Timing, persuasion, and subtle pressure are all crucial. This is not a gamble. It is orchestration, and the success of his plan depends on his foresight. Meanwhile, Anastasia moves through Brooklyn, overseeing enforcement assignments with efficiency that borders on art. A small-time gang has overstepped bounds. A minor confrontation has the potential to spiral. Anastasia resolves it cleanly: intimidation, calculated threats, and, if necessary, violence. Each action enhances his reputation, both feared and respected, and indirectly supports Rothstein's broader strategy. He is unaware of the larger orchestration, yet his precision ensures that the network of influence remains stable. Rothstein convenes a meeting with trusted lieutenants. The room is filled with quiet tension, the faint smell of cigars and polished wood hanging in the air. They discuss payments, potential betrayals, and contingency plans. Every detail is accounted for. He emphasizes patience and discretion, reminding them that success depends on subtlety and timing. Even minor mistakes could unravel months of preparation. Outside the window, the city continues its restless rhythm, oblivious to the intricacies unfolding within these walls. In the shadows, rival figures in the underworld are not idle. Whispers circulate of Rothstein's influence, his growing network, and his ability to manipulate outcomes without drawing attention. Jealousy, fear, and ambition converge. A rival bookmaker contemplates interference, unaware that Rothstein has anticipated such moves. Plans are shifted subtly, allies consulted, and minor provocations allowed to occur, all to expose intentions and measure loyalty. Rothstein's mind processes each development like pieces on a chessboard. Every ripple is noted, every reaction catalogued. Anastasia, in parallel, handles disputes, debts, and enforcement tasks with minimal visibility. He communicates in low tones, observes quietly, and acts decisively only when necessary. Men fear him yet respect his judgment. His actions, though tactical rather than strategic, reinforce Rothstein's network indirectly. The enforcer and the strategist are still apart, yet their paths increasingly intersect, connected by influence, timing, and necessity. Rothstein does not meet Anastasia directly this night, but the chain of effect is undeniable. The young enforcer's precision, efficiency, and discretion validate Rothstein's indirect manipulation of events. As the World Series draws nearer, Rothstein considers public perception and subtle pressures. He identifies moments where players' decisions can be influenced without overt coercion. Small debts, discreet favors, and unspoken expectations. The orchestration is delicate. He is aware that too much force, too blatant an attempt, could collapse the entire operation. Timing and subtlety are paramount. Rothstein prepares each move with precision, anticipating every possible outcome. The city's rhythm continues outside. Distant laughter, the rattle of streetcars, the occasional clang of a wagon, and the soft rustle of fog drifting through alleys. Inside Rothstein's townhouse, the world is silent, focused, and charged with anticipation. He reviews every ledger entry, calculates probabilities, and considers contingencies. Every whisper, every rumor, every minor interaction has significance. He sees connections that others cannot, patterns that escape casual observation. Rothstein's genius is in his vision, patience, and ability to manipulate unseen variables. Anastasia, after a long night ensuring compliance and efficiency, returns to Brooklyn. Men respect his authority, rivals fear his reputation. He is unaware of Rothstein's orchestration, yet his actions serve the broader network indirectly. Each decision he makes, every intervention, every enforcement, is a brick in the architecture Rothstein is building across the city. The convergence of their influence continues silently, threading through the underworld, preparing the stage for the coming events that will shake the city's balance. By midnight, Rothstein closes his ledgers, reviewing once more every contingency. He knows that a single misstep could unravel months of planning. But he also understands that patience and foresight are his allies. The city remains oblivious to the quiet, deliberate orchestration taking place behind closed doors. The whispers, movements, and subtle manipulations are invisible to most, yet they shape the future of New York's underworld. Rothstein and Anastasia are not merely participants. They are architects, executing a strategy that combines intellect, precision, and influence in ways few can perceive. As the night deepens, you feel the weight of what has been set in motion. The pieces are in place, the players positioned, and the city waits unknowingly for the events to unfold. Rothstein's brilliance, patience, and subtle manipulation have brought him to the edge of history, while Anastasia's efficiency and ruthlessness continue to stabilize the network that will support and challenge him. The stage is set. The first moves have been made. And soon, the scandal that will define Rothstein's legacy, and reshape the landscape of American sports and organized crime, will erupt. Tonight, the city sleeps, yet the currents of influence, strategy, and shadowed ambition flow as powerfully as ever. Rothstein and Anastasia, separate but intertwined, continue their silent dance, building toward a crescendo that will echo across time. You, the observer, sense the tension, the precision, and the inevitability of what is to come. The game is vast, the stakes immense, and the players are poised on the precipice of history. The autumn air drifts through Manhattan streets, carrying the scent of damp leaves and coal smoke. Streetcars clatter over rails slick from a recent drizzle, vendors shout their final calls for the evening, and the distant wail of a train horn echoes across the East River. But amidst the ordinary chaos, an extraordinary plan is coming to fruition. Arnold Rothstein's orchestration of the 1919 World Series, a gamble far larger than any played at his backroom tables, a game where the stakes include not just money, but reputation, legacy, and the delicate balance of New York's underworld. Rothstein sits in his townhouse, surveying a collection of notes, ledgers, and correspondences. Each player involved in the series has been analyzed meticulously. Their habits, financial pressures, pride, vulnerabilities, and tendencies under pressure. Rothstein has sent subtle messages, arranged discreet meetings, and ensured that favors, debts, and motivations are aligned in such a way that compliance is both profitable and nearly inevitable. This is not a matter of coercion alone. It is a demonstration of Rothstein's unparalleled understanding of human nature. Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, Albert Anastasia continues to assert his authority. Though unaware of the full scope of Rothstein's plan, his enforcement assignments maintain order and subtly reinforce the network that Rothstein relies upon. A minor disruption among local crews is quelled swiftly and decisively, establishing a precedent of obedience and fear. Anastasia's actions, though tactical rather than strategic, dovetail perfectly with the broader orchestration of events, demonstrating how ruthlessness and precision can inadvertently support a larger scheme. The first indirect results of Rothstein's influence become apparent as the series begins. Players, guided by subtle incentives and pressures, begin to perform in ways that align with his plan. A missed catch, a poorly timed pitch, a hesitant swing, small deviations that may seem inconsequential to the casual observer but are deliberate manipulations in Rothstein's calculation. Each act is measured, each outcome anticipated. Rothstein watches through intermediaries, analyzing every move, adjusting influence where necessary, and preparing contingencies in case resistance arises. The city, oblivious to these invisible maneuvers, hums with life. Street lamps flicker over slick cobblestones, fog drifts through alleys, and the distant hum of trolley cars forms a constant rhythm. Rothstein, in his townhouse, interprets these ordinary sounds as punctuation to his calculations. Each report from intermediaries, each subtle rumor, is a thread in the intricate tapestry of his orchestration. Even minor deviations in player behavior are noted, evaluated, and leveraged. Anastasia's role, though indirect, becomes increasingly significant. Rival factions in Brooklyn begin to notice disruptions in their usual operations, movements that align with Rothstein's broader strategy. Anastasia handles these with swift precision, neutralizing threats without drawing attention. His efficiency ensures that Rothstein's manipulations proceed with minimal interference. The young enforcer, though unaware of his contribution to the larger scheme, becomes a critical stabilizing force in the network of influence. Rothstein's patience and foresight are remarkable. He has not forced compliance through threats alone. Instead, he has shaped circumstances so that obedience is both advantageous and self-serving. Players understand the subtle pressures without ever being confronted overtly. Every bribe, every favor, every discreet suggestion is calculated to influence behavior without appearing coercive. This is psychological strategy at its finest, executed with meticulous attention to detail. By the midpoint of the series, the effects are clear. Outcomes on the field reflect Rothstein's careful manipulations, while off the field, alliances and obligations reinforce his position. He monitors every development through intermediaries, adjusting incentives, mitigating risks, and anticipating countermoves from rivals who sense but cannot fully grasp the orchestration unfolding. The city's underworld is a living network, and Rothstein's hand guides it invisibly, with precision and subtlety. Anastasia continues to execute tasks in Brooklyn, ensuring that local factions comply with the shifting balance of power. Men fear him, yet respect his judgment, and his reputation grows steadily. Rothstein's awareness of these actions allows him to predict outcomes and integrate the enforcer's precision into the broader plan. Though the two men have not yet met directly, their combined influence begins to shape the behavior of individuals and groups across New York. The final games of the series approach and Rothstein's preparations reach their peak. He double-checks every detail: payments, communications, contingencies, and potential leaks. Minor deviations are corrected quietly, incentives are reinforced. The city outside continues its nightly rhythm, but within Rothstein's controlled environment, every moment counts. The balance of chance and manipulation, risk and calculation, hangs delicately in the air. The series concludes in accordance with Rothstein's plan. Though the world outside celebrates and laments the outcomes as chance and performance, the hidden truth remains: meticulous orchestration, human psychology, and the subtle alignment of motivations have guided events. Rothstein observes quietly, a small smile of satisfaction crossing his features. The game has been won, not by brute force but by intellect, patience and understanding the human mind. In Brooklyn, Anastasia continues his enforcement duties, ensuring stability and order. He is unaware of the full scale of Rothstein's operation, yet his precision has ensured that obstacles were removed, threats neutralized and compliance maintained. The indirect collaboration between intellect and ruthlessness has succeeded, and the network of influence extends more firmly than ever. As midnight deepens, Rothstein reviews the outcomes and prepares for the next phase. The success of the World Series fix is only the beginning. The balance of power in New York's underworld has shifted, and opportunities for further consolidation await. Anastasia's rising influence complements Rothstein's strategy, creating a dynamic that will shape the criminal landscape for years to come. You, the silent observer, feel the gravity of these events. The convergence of strategy, precision, and human manipulation is complete, at least for this moment. Rothstein's intellect and foresight, combined with Anastasia's efficiency and ruthlessness, have orchestrated one of the most infamous manipulations in American history. The city, unaware of the hidden forces at work, continues to hum with life, carrying the consequences of these shadowed moves into every alley, every tavern, and every boardroom touched by ambition, fear, and power. Tonight, the World Series ends, but the game of influence continues. Rothstein's careful orchestration has succeeded, Anastasia's precision has reinforced stability, and the city itself feels the ripple of calculated ambition. The stage is set for new conflicts, alliances, and schemes, as the shadows of the past and the ambitions of men intersect in a dance as old as New York itself. The city feels different after the World Series. Autumn has deepened. The nights are colder, the fog thicker, curling around lampposts and stairwells. Streets glisten with the sheen of recent rain, the smell of wet asphalt mixing with the faint tang of coal and the aroma of bakery bread from lower Manhattan. On the surface, life continues unchanged. Streetcars clatter, shopkeepers close for the evening, and the distant laughter of late-night patrons drifts through the fog. Yet beneath this ordinary rhythm, the underworld shifts, adapting to the aftershocks of the scandal orchestrated by Arnold Rothstein. Rothstein observes quietly from his townhouse, reviewing reports delivered by trusted associates. The World Series fix has succeeded, yet its effects ripple far beyond the baseball diamond. Rivals are cautious, aware that a subtle force has moved the pieces of power without exposing itself. Allies are emboldened, recognizing the strategic genius of the brain. Every interaction, every whispered word in backrooms and gambling dens, now carries the weight of Rothstein's invisible hand. His empire, though largely unseen by the public, has solidified influence across both the sporting world and the criminal network. The underworld reacts with a mix of awe, fear, and curiosity. Some question how a single man could orchestrate such a complex manipulation. Others accept it as evidence of Rothstein's unparalleled intellect. Information moves through intermediaries, small-time gamblers, bookkeepers, and enforcers, feeding a perception that Rothstein is everywhere, knowing everything. Reputation, more than money or muscle, becomes his currency. Men speak cautiously even in private, wary of missteps that could bring Rothstein's attention or wrath. In this subtle web of influence, Rothstein's power grows, not through overt displays, but through calculated perception and strategic placement. Meanwhile, Albert Anastasia is stepping into a larger role within Brooklyn's criminal landscape. Murder Incorporated, still forming its identity, relies increasingly on his precision, ruthlessness, and ability to enforce decisions efficiently. Anastasia moves through assignments with meticulous control, a debt owed here, a territory disputed there. Each task is executed with calculated fearlessness, leaving no room for error or betrayal. His reputation flourishes, reaching ears even within Manhattan, where Rothstein notes with quiet approval the enforcer's growing effectiveness. Though Anastasia remains unaware of the larger orchestration, his work stabilizes Rothstein's network, removing obstacles and deterring potential rivals. The night air is thick as Rothstein convenes a small council of trusted lieutenants. The room smells faintly of cigars and polished wood. Plans are discussed with caution. The next moves following the World Series fix, potential challenges from rivals, and subtle expansions into other ventures such as loans, illegal gambling, and minor illicit enterprises. Rothstein emphasizes patience and subtlety. The city's underworld is volatile, and missteps could provoke violence or draw unwanted attention. His calm authority is palpable. Every man in the room feels the gravity of each decision, aware that Rothstein's mind already anticipates contingencies before they materialize. Across the river, Anastasia addresses a delicate problem in Brooklyn. Two rival factions threaten to disrupt the balance of power. Anastasia moves decisively, sending precise messages through his associates, arranging subtle demonstrations of force, and neutralizing threats without overt conflict. His actions, though tactical, produce outcomes that align seamlessly with Rothstein's broader strategy. The two men, operating independently yet converging in influence, demonstrate a synergy invisible to the casual observer. Rothstein's vision of New York's underworld continues to take shape, guided by intellect and reinforced by calculated execution. Rumors spread throughout the city. Competitors in the gambling world whisper about Rothstein's unseen hand. Enforcers take note of Anastasia's efficiency. Small victories in minor disputes compound to build an atmosphere of control and inevitability. Rothstein and Anastasia, though not yet fully allied, establish the framework for a network in which strategic intelligence and precise enforcement reinforce one another. Trust, fear, and respect are the currencies exchanged silently, while power consolidates quietly in shadowed corridors and dimly lit backrooms. Rothstein reviews the broader picture late into the night. He considers financial flows, influence over law enforcement, potential betrayals, and emerging threats. Minor adjustments are made. A loan extended here, a favor acknowledged there, subtle pressure applied to those who hesitate. The World Series fix, while completed, is merely one thread in a larger tapestry. Control, influence, and stability require constant vigilance. Rothstein's mind, always calculating, always analyzing, ensures that the network continues to function seamlessly, ready to adapt to unforeseen developments. Anastasia, following a long evening of enforcement and oversight, reflects on the efficiency of his operations. His men respect him, rivals fear him, and his presence stabilizes both territory and morale. Though he does not yet grasp the full scope of Rothstein's orchestration, his contributions are critical to the network's effectiveness. The convergence of intellect and execution is becoming evident, forming a backbone of influence that extends from Brooklyn to Manhattan and beyond. Outside, the city remains unaware of the hidden architecture shaping its underworld. Fog drifts along the streets, gas lamps cast long shadows, and the muffled clatter of carts punctuates the quiet. Beneath the ordinary, strategic influence courses through backrooms, alleys, and clandestine gambling halls. Rothstein's subtle orchestration and Anastasia's ruthless precision continue to align, each action reinforcing the other. Power consolidates silently, unseen by the public yet palpable among those attuned to the rhythm of the streets. As midnight deepens, Rothstein reviews the day's developments. The World Series fix has proven successful, rivalries have been neutralized, and his influence has expanded. Anastasia's precision has maintained order and ensured compliance, reinforcing Rothstein's network indirectly. The city sleeps, but the undercurrents of power, strategy, and ambition flow steadily, quietly shaping the landscape for future conflicts, alliances, and schemes. Tonight the stage is set. Rothstein consolidates his influence, preparing for the next phase of ambition. Anastasia, rising in authority, sharpens his skills and expands his presence within Murder Incorporated. Together, though operating independently, they form the foundation of a network that will dominate New York's underworld for years to come. The shadows deepen, the streets whisper, and history, in all its subtle intricacies, begins to record the convergence of intellect and ruthlessness. The city hums with tension tonight. Gas lamps flicker against wet streets, their halos distorted by drifting fog, casting elongated shadows that seem to slither along brick walls. Manhattan is alive, yet beneath its familiar rhythm, a hidden game unfolds, one that few recognize but all will feel in due time. Arnold Rothstein, the brain, moves quietly through the city, accompanied by trusted lieutenants, his mind calculating every possibility, every threat, and every opportunity. Tonight, that calculation is about to intersect directly with the force that is Albert Anastasia. Rothstein's townhouse, though unassuming from the street, holds the nerve center of his influence. Ledgers, correspondence, and notes clutter the polished tables, each representing months of observation, planning, and manipulation. The success of the World Series fix has expanded his reputation and power, yet he understands that consolidation requires more than indirect influence. Allies must be tested, enforcers assessed, and potential threats neutralized. In Brooklyn, Anastasia has grown in notoriety, his precise ruthlessness earning fear and respect alike. Rothstein has long observed him through intermediaries, but tonight marks the first deliberate point of convergence. The meeting is arranged in a neutral location, an abandoned warehouse on the edge of Manhattan, chosen for discretion and privacy. The building smells faintly of aged wood, dust, and damp concrete. Moonlight filters through cracked windows, casting narrow beams across wooden crates and shadows stretching across the floor. Rothstein arrives first, his movements deliberate and calm, eyes scanning every corner for potential threats or weaknesses. He is aware that appearances matter. A single misstep could alert adversaries or undermine the careful balance of power he has cultivated. Anastasia arrives shortly after, flanked by a small cadre of trusted enforcers. His presence commands immediate attention, a quiet authority, an aura of calculated threat, and the efficiency of a man who has learned that control is maintained through precision. Rothstein observes the enforcer, noting posture, gestures, and subtle cues of temperament. Anastasia, in turn, senses the weight of Rothstein's reputation, aware that he is meeting a man whose intellect and influence stretch beyond most comprehension. Though neither speaks yet, the room is charged with a mutual acknowledgement of ability, ambition, and potential collaboration, or confrontation. Introductions are brief and deliberate. Rothstein's tone is calm but authoritative, Anastasia's measured and precise. Each word carries weight, each gesture conveys intention. They discuss operations indirectly at first. Mutual interests in controlling gambling networks, influence over rival factions, and stabilization of territories prone to conflict. Rothstein assesses Anastasia's understanding, flexibility, and loyalty. Anastasia gauges Rothstein's intellect, foresight, and capacity to manage complex operations. The dialogue is sparse but laden with meaning. The unspoken communicates as much as the spoken. As the discussion continues, Rothstein subtly outlines objectives that align with both their interests. The orchestration of betting networks, management of enforcement operations, and strategic neutralization of threats form the backbone of a plan that leverages Rothstein's intellect and Anastasia's efficiency. Anastasia listens, evaluating feasibility, risk, and potential for personal advancement. Though direct authority is deferred to Rothstein's strategic mind, the enforcer recognizes the necessity of precision and execution for the plan to succeed. A silent understanding forms. Their combined abilities can dominate the city's underworld, if managed carefully. Meanwhile, outside the warehouse, shadows move, rivals, competitors, and opportunists sensing the convergence of two powerful forces. Rothstein and Anastasia are aware of this, yet neither is perturbed. Threats are inevitable and contingency plans are already in place. A subtle signal, a whispered code, ensures that potential interference is managed without exposing vulnerability. The city's underworld is a living organism, reacting to the alignment of intellect and ruthlessness within its hidden corridors. The meeting shifts from strategy to verification of loyalty. Rothstein probes subtly, testing Anastasia's judgment and decisiveness through hypothetical scenarios and indirect questions. Anastasia responds with clarity, efficiency, and confidence. Each answer reinforces Rothstein's assessment. This is a man who can operate under pressure, execute decisions precisely, and adapt to rapidly changing circumstances. Trust, though not yet complete, is tentatively established through competence and mutual recognition of capability. With the foundation of cooperation established, Rothstein and Anastasia outline their next steps. Small-scale operations are delegated, responsibilities clearly defined, and channels of communication secured through intermediaries. Rothstein retains strategic control. Anastasia implements enforcement, stabilization, and precision intervention. The combination of intellect and execution promises to reshape the landscape of New York's underworld. The balance of fear, respect, and loyalty is maintained, ensuring compliance from associates and deterring rivals from interference. Outside, the city continues its nightly rhythm. Fog drifts through narrow alleys, streetcars clatter, and distant laughter from taverns echoes faintly. Yet within the warehouse, a new reality has been established. The convergence of two formidable forces, each complementing the other's strengths, forming a network that will control gambling, influence, and enforcement across boroughs. The unspoken understanding is clear. The underworld will now bend to the combined strategy of intellect and precision, and any attempt to oppose it will be met with carefully calculated consequences. By midnight, Rothstein and Anastasia conclude their meeting. Handshakes are firm, acknowledgement of competence and potential conveyed without fanfare. Rothstein returns to Manhattan, reviewing notes and ensuring intermediaries implement the agreed-upon actions. Anastasia returns to Brooklyn, ready to enforce, stabilize, and execute with unwavering efficiency. The city, unaware of the power now aligned within its hidden corridors, continues to hum with ordinary life, yet its underworld has shifted irreversibly. You, the observer, feel the magnitude of this convergence. Rothstein's intellect, foresight, and strategic planning meet Anastasia's ruthlessness, precision, and fear-inspiring authority. Together they form a network capable of controlling not just gambling and enforcement, but influence, perception, and opportunity across New York. Shadows now hold new weight. Every whispered word, every minor movement in backrooms and alleys, carries the potential to reinforce or disrupt the balance of power. The dance of strategy and execution has begun in earnest, setting the stage for the ensuing years of dominance, conflict, and intrigue. Tonight, the city sleeps under a veil of fog and dim street lamps. Yet beneath the surface, influence flows like a silent river, guided by the combined force of Rothstein and Anastasia. The stakes have never been higher, the potential greater, and the game more dangerous. The mind and the blade, intellect and execution, have met, forever changing the rhythm of New York's underworld, leaving a ripple that will echo through every alley, backroom, and hidden gambling den for years to come. The streets of New York are slick with autumn rain, reflecting the glow of gas lamps in distorted, trembling patterns. The city moves beneath the surface of routine life, yet in the hidden corridors of power, a more intricate rhythm dictates the behavior of men, alliances, and fortunes. Arnold Rothstein, the brain, observes this network from the quiet of his townhouse, analyzing every ripple of influence, every whisper, every small act of defiance or compliance. Tonight, the stakes are higher than ever as Murder Incorporated, guided by Anastasia's ruthlessness, begins to extend its influence across Brooklyn and Manhattan. Anastasia moves through his domain with precision. The enforcers under his command handle debt collection, territorial disputes, and subtle intimidation with a discipline that borders on artistry. Each action is calculated, deliberate, and executed with minimal exposure. A rival crew attempting to encroach on a controlled neighborhood finds itself neutralized swiftly, doors subtly locked, messages discreetly delivered, and threats implied rather than shouted. Anastasia's efficiency ensures that the criminal network functions smoothly, reinforcing Rothstein's overarching plan while consolidating fear and respect in equal measure. Rothstein, informed of these developments through a network of intermediaries, adjusts strategy. He identifies potential weak points, considers the ambitions of rival operators, and calculates the likelihood of resistance. His brilliance lies not only in orchestration but also in anticipation. He foresees the consequences of actions before they occur, ensuring that contingencies are in place. The interplay of intellect and execution is now evident. Anastasia implements enforcement while Rothstein manages strategy, risk, and perception. Together, they maintain control without ever revealing the full extent of their network to outsiders. Reports arrive detailing minor uprisings, attempted interference from competitors who sense Rothstein's increasing influence. In one instance, a rival bookmaker tries to rally support among smaller operators, underestimating Rothstein's reach. The response is subtle yet decisive. Favors are withdrawn, debts quietly enforced, and a message is delivered through Anastasia's enforcers, leaving no room for misunderstanding. The competitor's efforts collapse under the weight of calculated influence, and Rothstein notes each reaction meticulously, cataloging behavior for future reference. Simultaneously, Rothstein expands operations into more legitimate fronts. Investments in clubs, gambling parlors, and subtle business ventures provide both cover and revenue streams. The city's elite, unaware of the hidden orchestration, perceive Rothstein's influence as mere fortune and connections, failing to recognize the precise manipulation of circumstances that underpins his empire. In these circles, perception is power, and Rothstein controls both perception and reality. Anastasia's actions reinforce this structure. Assignments increase in complexity. Rival factions attempting mergers, violent disputes over territory, and enforcement of hidden agreements all demand coordination, decisiveness, and precision. Anastasia executes each with minimal exposure, ensuring that Rothstein's plans continue uninterrupted. His reputation grows. Men whisper his name in fear and respect, and the network gains a cohesion that few outside can challenge. Yet challenges persist. Competing forces, threatened by Rothstein's unseen control and Anastasia's efficiency, begin probing weaknesses. Minor provocations, miscommunications, and tests of loyalty are common. Rothstein anticipates each, implementing contingencies that neutralize threats before they materialize fully. Anastasia, tasked with the operational enforcement, intervenes at critical moments, stabilizing potentially volatile situations with ruthless efficiency. The synergy between strategist and executor becomes undeniable. The city itself becomes a character in this unfolding drama. Fog drifts through alleys, reflections shimmer in puddles on cobblestones, and distant shouts echo faintly from taverns. Each environment is leveraged strategically. A dimly lit backroom ensures privacy, a crowded street ensures anonymity, a warehouse isolates key interactions. Rothstein's orchestration manipulates space, time, and human behavior simultaneously. Anastasia's precision ensures execution is flawless. Together they dominate not through visibility, but through control of circumstances and perception. Late one evening, Rothstein convenes a meeting with his lieutenants. The room is dim, the smell of cigars thick in the air, ledgers and notes spread across tables. Discussions focus on risk management, maintaining influence and anticipating future challenges. Rothstein emphasizes subtlety. Visibility invites interference, while discreet manipulation ensures compliance. Every member of the network understands the stakes. Failure is not an option, and missteps could provoke violent or strategic retaliation from rivals. Anastasia, meanwhile, conducts a series of strategic interventions. Minor disputes are resolved swiftly, debts enforced, and threats neutralized. His men operate like extensions of his own mind, executing instructions with discipline and precision. Each action supports Rothstein's broader vision, even as Anastasia remains unaware of the full scope. The two men, operating in parallel yet converging in effect, create a network of influence that extends across boroughs, consolidating power and preemptively neutralizing opposition. Word of their combined influence begins to spread. Men in Manhattan and Brooklyn whisper of Rothstein's intellect and Anastasia's ruthlessness. Fear and respect coalesce into obedience, and subtle alliances shift in response to their growing presence. Rival operators begin to tread carefully, aware that the hidden orchestration is not to be challenged lightly. Every move, every minor interaction, every seemingly trivial action is now measured against the potential reach of the brain and the precision of the enforcer. By midnight, the city is quiet, yet charged with tension. Rothstein reviews the day's events, noting successes, minor complications, and areas requiring further attention. Anastasia, finishing his rounds in Brooklyn, reports back on enforcement, compliance, and rival reactions. Their combined operations continue to strengthen, reinforcing influence, controlling perception, and neutralizing potential threats. The network of intellect and execution functions seamlessly, a model of strategic efficiency few could perceive, and even fewer could oppose. You, the observer, sense the magnitude of this orchestration. Rothstein's foresight, patience, and intellect have been matched by Anastasia's ruthless precision, creating a network that controls influence, fear, and opportunity across New York's underworld. The convergence of mind and blade, strategy and enforcement, has transformed the city's hidden landscape. Shadows now hold power, whispers carry authority, and the unseen hand of orchestration guides outcomes with unerring accuracy. Tonight, the underworld of New York has been shaped decisively. Rothstein consolidates his control, anticipates further challenges, and expands influence through both subtlety and cunning. Anastasia executes assignments that enforce order and eliminate obstacles. Together, though operating in parallel, their combined presence reshapes the city's criminal landscape, establishing a foundation of control, precision, and fear that will define New York's underworld for years to come. The chill of early winter has settled over New York. Fog drifts through narrow streets and alleys, curling around gas lamps and reflecting in puddles on the cobblestones. The city is alive with the familiar hum of late-night activity, but beneath this surface, tension coils like a living thing. The delicate web that Arnold Rothstein has woven, intellect, influence, and subtle coercion, is being tested. Whispers of betrayal, challenges to authority, and rival ambitions ripple through the underworld, and tonight, those currents reach a peak. Rothstein sits in his townhouse, reviewing reports from trusted lieutenants. Minor uprisings among rival operators have been observed. Unplanned movements, miscalculations, and attempts to exploit perceived weaknesses. Each incident is catalogued, analyzed, and assessed for risk. Rothstein's calm demeanor hides the intricate calculations in his mind. Every act of defiance is expected. Every misstep is an opportunity to reinforce control. He does not react with brute force, but with foresight and precision, adjusting variables and leveraging alliances to maintain dominance. Across Brooklyn, Anastasia is consolidating power within Murder Incorporated. Assignments have become increasingly complex. Rival crews testing authority, territorial disputes flaring, and betrayals of small-time associates threatening stability. Anastasia acts decisively, executing interventions with meticulous efficiency. Threats are neutralized, loyalty is reinforced, and the network remains disciplined. While he operates independently, the effects of his actions support Rothstein's broader strategy, ensuring that the network of influence remains intact despite attempts to challenge it. The first signs of significant betrayal emerge when one of Rothstein's minor associates attempts to manipulate outcomes for personal gain. A carefully orchestrated series of actions, slight delays in payments, misreported information, subtle misdirection, threatens to unravel months of planning. Rothstein detects the pattern almost immediately, analyzing behavioral cues and comparing them with past data. He understands the motivations, predicts the likely course of action, and formulates a response. The betrayal is addressed quietly but decisively. Influence is recalibrated, and the associate is reminded, without overt confrontation, of the hierarchy and consequences of disloyalty. Meanwhile, Anastasia faces challenges from within Murder Incorporated. Some enforcers, emboldened by rumors and promises of independence, test boundaries. One minor conflict escalates. A dispute over territory threatens to destabilize the network's cohesion. Anastasia intervenes swiftly, neutralizing the challenge without unnecessary bloodshed. The efficiency of his response reinforces loyalty and fear simultaneously, ensuring that the chain of command remains unbroken. Every calculated move stabilizes the network and prevents rival factions from exploiting perceived weaknesses. Rothstein, aware of these disturbances, adjusts his strategies for both influence and risk management. The city's underworld is not static. Ambitions, greed, and personal grievances constantly create potential flashpoints. He prepares contingencies, alternative alliances, discreet enforcement measures, and strategic interventions to preempt further disruption. Timing is crucial. Actions must be precise and subtle to maintain the balance of perception and obedience. The stakes have never been higher, and Rothstein's mind operates at full capacity, orchestrating outcomes from behind the scenes. The convergence of Rothstein and Anastasia's actions becomes increasingly apparent. While Anastasia executes operational enforcement with precision, Rothstein manipulates the larger framework of influence, subtly guiding outcomes. Together, they create a system in which intellect and ruthlessness reinforce each other. Rivals attempting to exploit the network find themselves neutralized, sometimes subtly, sometimes decisively, but always in ways that maintain the illusion of normalcy and control. The unseen synergy between strategist and enforcer becomes a powerful stabilizing force, shaping the city's underworld with unparalleled efficiency. Minor conflicts continue to surface. A rival bookmaker attempts to challenge Rothstein's gambling operations, seeking to reclaim influence lost after the World Series scandal. Simultaneously, a minor faction within Murder Incorporated considers defiance. Both threats are addressed. Anastasia neutralizes operational disruptions with precision, while Rothstein applies strategic pressure through alliances, information control, and subtle incentives. The combination ensures that stability is restored without exposing the full extent of their control. Power is maintained not through overt confrontation alone, but through the careful interplay of strategy, enforcement, and perception. Outside, Manhattan and Brooklyn hum with normalcy. Streetcars rattle, footsteps echo along wet streets, and distant voices carry across alleys. Yet beneath this veneer, influence flows like a silent river, shaped by Rothstein's intellect and Anastasia's precision. Every whispered conversation, every minor deviation, and every observation is a thread in a network that dominates gambling, enforcement, and perception. The city itself becomes both stage and instrument, reacting to the calculated maneuvers of two men whose convergence has transformed the underworld. By midnight, Rothstein reviews the cumulative effects of the day's events. Betrayals have been addressed, rival threats mitigated, and the network reinforced. Anastasia's interventions have preserved operational stability, while Rothstein's strategic adjustments ensure long-term dominance. The balance of power, once delicate, has been recalibrated to withstand future challenges. Shadows move with new precision, alliances strengthen, and fear is tempered with respect. You, the observer, feel the weight of these developments. Rothstein's intellect and foresight, combined with Anastasia's execution and ruthlessness, create a network capable of controlling not only actions but perceptions, loyalty, and fear. Betrayal is managed before it can destabilize the system, and rival ambitions are neutralized subtly and decisively. The city, unaware of the orchestration, continues to breathe, while the underworld bends to the unseen hands of strategy and precision. Tonight, the city sleeps under a blanket of fog and the glow of gas lamps. Within the shadows, Rothstein consolidates influence, adapts strategy, and monitors threats. Anastasia enforces order, stabilizes operations, and projects fear and respect. Together, they form a formidable combination of intellect and force, capable of shaping New York's underworld for years to come. The stage is set for the final chapter: legacy, reckoning, and the consequences of brilliance and ruthlessness. The chill of winter settles deeply over New York City. Fog drifts along cobblestone streets, curling around gas lamps, drifting into alleyways, and obscuring the outlines of tenements and warehouses. The city continues its familiar rhythm: streetcars clattering, distant voices echoing, horses' hooves striking the wet pavement. But beneath this everyday hum, the echoes of Rothstein's orchestration and Anastasia's ruthless precision linger, shaping the hidden world that few truly see. Arnold Rothstein sits quietly in his Manhattan townhouse, surveying the ledger of his empire. The World Series scandal, once the pinnacle of his calculated influence, now rests behind him as both triumph and cautionary tale. Allies are loyal, rivals subdued or neutralized, and the city's underworld has largely bent to the invisible architecture he has carefully constructed. Yet Rothstein understands that control is ephemeral. Empires of influence require constant vigilance, subtle maneuvering, and an unwavering grasp of human behavior. Every whisper, every glance, every minor act could ripple into consequences if not anticipated. Across the river in Brooklyn, Albert Anastasia reviews the territory he commands. Murder Incorporated, now a formidable and feared network, operates with efficiency and precision. Rival factions tread carefully, aware that disobedience or defiance will meet calculated consequences. Anastasia, though never claiming full strategic authority, understands his value: enforcement, discipline, and the ability to execute operations flawlessly. His reputation solidifies as both enforcer and executor of Rothstein's indirect vision, a man whose presence commands obedience without question. The convergence of intellect and execution, strategist and enforcer, has created a network that dominates both perception and action. Rothstein's foresight, Anastasia's precision, and the careful orchestration of alliances, debts, and fear have established a formidable equilibrium. Yet even as their influence spreads, the world outside remains oblivious, treating outcomes as chance, luck, or happenstance, unaware of the meticulous control that shapes them. Not all is secure. Rivals continue to scheme, minor betrayals linger, and the network's stability depends on continuous attention. Rothstein anticipates these threats, arranging contingencies and instructing intermediaries to observe, report, and intervene subtly. Anastasia continues his work, neutralizing potential challenges with quiet ruthlessness. Each action reinforces the network, each response consolidates power, and the balance between fear and respect is maintained. As winter deepens, Rothstein reflects on his legacy. The games he has played extend beyond gambling tables and alleys. They have shaped human behavior, redirected ambition, and influenced the fates of countless men. His brilliance is measured not in coins or trophies but in the obedience, fear, and respect he commands through intellect and subtlety. The city itself, unaware of the orchestration, moves to his rhythm, an invisible symphony directed by the mind of the brain. Anastasia, too, contemplates his own path. He is feared, respected, and efficient, a figure whose actions dictate compliance and order. Yet the enforcer's legacy is built in shadows, through fear and precision rather than public acclaim. Every decision, every execution, every subtle demonstration of control reinforces the network Rothstein has envisioned. While the strategist plans and calculates, the enforcer ensures outcomes align with vision, turning intellect into tangible influence. The city outside is quiet now. Gas lamps flicker across fog-laden streets, the distant clatter of wheels has subsided, and a soft wind carries the smell of coal and wet brick through alleys. Shadows linger longer, echoing the legacy of decisions made, alliances forged, and power consolidated. Rothstein closes his ledgers, reviewing accomplishments and noting future contingencies. Anastasia retires briefly to his quarters, planning assignments, evaluating loyalty, and maintaining the disciplined flow of the organization. Yet even as power consolidates, mortality and chance remind both men of the fragility inherent in their world. Rothstein, for all his intellect, remains human. Anastasia, for all his ruthlessness, remains vulnerable to the unpredictable currents of ambition, envy, and betrayal. Their legacy is therefore both tangible and ephemeral, built in influence, fear, and precision, yet always subject to the shifting landscape of human behavior. The city's underworld has been transformed. Gambling networks are controlled, enforcement operations function seamlessly, and alliances solidify under the combined shadow of intellect and ruthlessness. Men move cautiously, aware of forces beyond immediate perception, and rival factions reconsider challenges. Rothstein's orchestration, Anastasia's execution, and the silent interplay between mind and blade have reshaped power in New York. The game, though ongoing, has reached a point of balance, a precarious equilibrium maintained through foresight, discipline, and subtle fear. As the night deepens, Rothstein and Anastasia reflect silently on their journeys. The brain's intellect has molded events, manipulated outcomes, and influenced perception. The enforcer's precision has stabilized networks, neutralized threats, and enforced loyalty. Together, though operating in different spheres, they have crafted a hidden architecture of power that few could oppose. Their convergence has created a legacy of influence, control, and fear that will echo through the streets, alleys, and backrooms of New York for years to come. Finally, Rothstein retires to a quiet contemplation, considering both his triumphs and the fragility of control. Anastasia, in parallel, ensures that operational order remains intact, reinforcing his reputation and the stability of Murder Incorporated. The city sleeps under fog and gaslight, unaware of the forces that shape its underworld. Yet every shadow, every whispered conversation, every subtle act of influence carries the imprint of two men whose intellect, precision, and ambition have forever altered the landscape of crime and power. Tonight, as you, the observer, draw back from the scene, you realize the magnitude of what has been achieved. Rothstein's strategic brilliance and Anastasia's ruthless efficiency have converged to form an unparalleled network of influence. Betrayals have been managed, rivals neutralized, and operations stabilized. The city, though oblivious, carries the weight of their legacy in every shadow, every whispered rumor, every calculated action. The game has ended, yet its echoes continue to shape the lives of those who navigate the underworld of New York, and the stories of intellect, ruthlessness, and strategic brilliance will endure long after the city's fog lifts.